We're currently under the full-on developer annual shareholder meeting quote season, where essentially developers and publishers are giving out statements to the shareholders as plenty of questions are being asked regarding what are their plans for next major game releases. Square-Enix just recently held their 43rd annual shareholders meetings with the management team for multiple franchises and plenty of investors. And in this specific meeting, they were asked regarding not just the success of Final Fantasy 1 and 6 Pixel Remaster, which we'll be talking about at the back end of the video, but more importantly, they were asked what are their plans for making remasters, remakes, HD-2D games of all classics, or anything along those lines for Chrono Trigger and Xenogears Remaster, or a Xenogears Remaster trilogy of some type. So in this video, I'm going to be going over a couple of the quotes from the official investors meetings. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below for the actual English translation officially from Square-Enix. So we'll be showing that as well. And pretty much just give a little bit of my opinion as to what it is they should be doing. With that said though, back in February, I specifically made a video, I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below for that as well, where in last year's developers division, like a couple of quotes from developers for the beginning of the year, they spoke about their ongoing efforts of making more HD-2D titles of classic SNES and PlayStation 1 era games. And of course, recently we got the confirmation that Star Ocean 2 is getting not just an HD-2D remaster, but a full-on remake with 2.5 HD type graphics, which looks amazing. I made a separate video on that, link in the description below, talking about all of the details for that specific game for those players who haven't necessarily heard of just how fantastic that game is, but more importantly, why Square-Enix decided to kind of like remaster that game from the bottom up and rebuild it in the way that it looks now. So getting into the actual questions that they had in this developers investments meeting, one of the questions was specifically from an investor wondering if they are going to do anything with Xenogears Remastered or Chrono Trigger. And the question was simply put as, in the company's existing businesses, it has longer gaps between game releases than its peers do. Even if the quality and the issue is high, these long gaps seem to impact sales. What are your thoughts and releases scheduled for major future titles? The premise of the question being that they release like things like Final Fantasy 16, for example, but then they go quiet for a couple of months and they don't necessarily release any other high budget releases, and that is what these investors want answers for. Square Enix simply said that they will refrain from specifics, but they will say that they believe that strengthening their internal developer organizations will benefit them as difficulty of developing major titles is becoming extremely high, which also has implications for development lead times. They hope to reinforce the organization and will promote development not only of major titles but new IPs under the new management team. Remember that Square Enix is going through a little bit of restructuring, so they are also working on the fact that a couple of new people are in charge. They're also making decisions, and a lot of the things that are already in full-on development that are, say, that's going to be releasing within the next year or two are things that the previous let's say bosses put in charge. These are not decisions that they are going to be fostering, but some ideas that they want to happen will most likely take years to be able to get fully implemented. So it's not like they could really make everything right away, even if, you know, investors demand them to. That's just not necessarily how it works. And the follow-up, they also asked, Final Fantasy 1 through 6 Pixel Remaster has been well received. Are there plans to remaster other past titles? Personally, I would like to play Xenogears. And this with Chrono Trigger is something that a lot of players, and now interestingly enough investors, have been asking a lot about. Now Chrono Cross did get that pseudo work, kind of like remaster, where people were not necessarily too happy on the way that it worked. Chrono Trigger is something that there has been plenty of rumors for an HD-2D remaster. I quoted that back in my February video where I spoke about Square Enix's ongoing talks about HD-2D, and it is a franchise that people want to see. Xenogears, on the other hand, though, is a more interesting one because there's multiple games already available, but they're not necessarily available in current-gen consoles. And because they are 3D, they're not pixel art, these games will most likely lend themselves better to full-on something like Baten Kaito's type remasters, where they're not necessarily being rebuilt from the ground up or anything along those lines, but just being touched up enough to be able to make them palatable to a modern audience. And that's probably one of the reasons why they're so hesitant on doing anything Xenogears related. Those games, even at their time, were niche. Yes, they're beloved by many players. I love the first one, but let's be real about it. They don't necessarily hold up all that well in modern days. So this is something that Square-Enix has to keep in mind. Their response simply was, we will refrain from sharing information about new titles, but we are considering various ideas within the company and hope that you look forward to forthcoming announcements. So while they don't necessarily give away the house, they do mention that they are considering it at the very least, and it's something that, you know, an announcement should be pending. Once again, for Chrono Trigger, we have plenty of leads suggesting that they are already working on something regarding that, and the Chrono Cross kind of like remaster port type thing was a little bit of testing the waters. For Xenogears is a little bit different because we haven't necessarily seen them do or try to do anything with that, and those games lending themselves to HD-2D probably wouldn't necessarily hold up all that well, unless of course they didn't make the proper adjustments. Now at the same time, we are pretty much in the golden era of full-on PlayStation 1 SNES era type full-on remasters and remakes. Remember that Konami is still working on the Suikoden 1 and 2 HD 2D type remaster that they are doing on their own efforts. They just recently revealed the Metal Gear Volume 1 collection with the first 3 games, which spans PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 games on top of SNES, NES, and PS1 games. So there's a lot going on there, and plenty of other games that at the end of the day are getting plenty of love. I just recently covered, of course, Capcom's newest efforts with Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. I put up a review for that. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below, and that remaster is amazing. They're doing an amazing job with that. As a DS game from back in the day that they basically took from 2 screens, they turned it into a 1-screen game, and they did a fantastic job. You know, it runs well, it looks good, they re-upped the visuals enough, it plays extremely well. Very little to complain about. So at the end of the day, again, developers and publishers are fully aware what players are demanding. We just saw Nintendo reveal, you know, Super Mario RPG remake of all things, you know, like something that players would love to see on like Nintendo Switch Online or something dropped for, you know, the SNES classic collection that they have going on there, but they instead decided to remake the entire game altogether. So, you know, they're doing fantastic. They're doing a lot of things that are making players happy, but of course, you know, there's never enough to satiate the hunger of gamers. If you're brand new to my channel, though, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.